Way, absolutely. So the title of my talk today is We've Got Spirit, How About You? Because certainly we in this room absolutely have spirit. You can just feel it in this room. You can just feel it in this service. It is absolutely palpable as a sense of love and openness and connectedness with each other and connectedness with life. It is palpable as care and concern for each other. It is palpable as generosity of heart and generosity of resources and generosity of our energy and of our time. It is so relevant and recognizable as creativity in this one right here and in joy that we are all expressing. And I also know that it is absolutely spirit is palpable in each one of our lives, in the way that we live with the intention of being open-hearted and with the intention of being a positive impact on this world. And so I'm talking today about living our spirituality, about living from our spirit, living from the Spirit, from that infinite presence that indwells our heart and our soul. I'm talking about living from that place. I'm talking about that when we live from our spirit, when we live our spirituality, what happens is we become a healing presence in this world wherever we go. We restore sanity to what seems like craziness going on around us. We bring harmony to situations that do not feel harmonious. We bring harmony into our own lives. Yes, do you have an experience of bringing harmony into your own life because you're walking this path more so than before? And bring harmony into this world. We participate in that evolutionary push of the divine that we talk about when we are living from our spirit and when we are living our spirituality. And you know what? Living our spirituality and living from our spirit is not always easy. It can be quite challenging sometimes. And really, the reason that it's challenging is because when we're not living from our spirit, instead we're living from our ego. And when we live from our ego and we see through the eyes of the ego, what happens is everything is a duality. There is right and there is wrong. And that means only one person can be right. And that shows up in our relationships, in arguing, and it shows up in our workplaces as having difficulties, and it certainly shows up in our politics today. Only one person can be right. I am right or they are right. It is through those eyes of the ego and through that perspective of the ego, it is us versus them. It is competition and win-lose, and if they win, that means I lose. And when we're seeing from that place, it does not bring harmony. It does not bring peace. We are not participating in that evolutionary push of the divine when we do that. When we are seeing through the eyes of our ego, we see ourselves as separate and isolated from everyone and everything. Seeing through those limited eyes of the ego, what happens then is we think that everything has to be solved and resolved through our limited human resources, through what we already know, through what we've already experienced, through our own might or power. And it's a limited power, and it's a limited perspective. So in order to live from our spirit, instead of our ego, it takes commitment and it takes practice because it isn't what we come by naturally. And so what does it mean to live from your spirit or to live your spirituality or to live from that infinite presence that lives within us? I think one of the things that it means is living in the realization that we are walking this spiritual path all of the time. And that everything that shows up in our lives, everything that presents itself, is a part of our spiritual path. Living our spirituality means seeing and living from that realization. It means living in the realization that when things show up in our lives, they are always an opportunity to discover something greater and to give way to a greater part of ourselves and to discover and realize in a greater way who and what we really are. I think it's living in a greater realization of our connection to life and to everybody and everything. I think a second part of living our spirituality means tapping into that part of ourself that is beyond that human limited part, that is beyond our fears and our concerns and our worries and our ego demands, and instead to turn within to that divine presence that lives within us, to that higher self, to our essential spiritual nature. So it means not just to live from that human self, but to turn to that part of ourselves. I think living our spirituality means living and coming from a realization of oneness, that Carol talked about, that Rick sang about, that there is only one of us, and that we are each a part of that divine presence, and that divine one is in everyone, even the people we disagree with. That presence lives within them. I think it is also remembering, and this is a big one for me, remembering that we are here to be that presence, that we are here to bring that presence into this world, to see it around us, to call it forward from other people, to invite it forward, because when we see spirit in other people, when we see the infinite in other people, we don't even have to say anything. It awakens that in them and invites it forward in a whole new way. And so I want to know, what does it mean to you to live your spirituality? What does it mean to you to live from your spirit, or from your divine self, or from that infinite in you? What does it mean to live a spiritual life and to walk a spiritual path? What does it mean, and what does it look like to you? And so I'm going to invite some of you to share what that means to you, to live a spiritual life, to walk a spiritual path, to live your spirituality. Who has something to say?
I think freedom and safety, just peace.
To live from that awareness. Nice. Who else? What does it mean to walk a spiritual path, to live a spiritual life?
Well, for me, it's being willing to notice when I'm on the path and to notice when I'm not, and to bring myself back intentionally to this path. And if I pay attention to my inner feelings and my beingness, it becomes pretty clear when I'm not on the path. There's a lot of disruption going on. So it is constantly observing yourself in ways.
Thank you.
It allows me to forgive the guy that cut me off on the freeway, and then to forgive myself for being mad at that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me it means living from gratitude in every moment, even when things aren't going right, to step back and just be grateful for my life and what I have and the people that are in it.
That's nice. That's nice.
Is to remember for me to practice what I preach.
Yeah, it's certainly easier to preach it than to practice it.
Just to confirm what you were saying, at my work right now, we're going through some extraordinary conflicts. I've been there 24 years and never seen anything like it. And it's been really hard to hold that space. And I guess for me, what I just came back is to empathy and not trying to take sides, just trying to be a safe space for people as they go through the conflicts together.
I don't know, Chris and I were talking last night. I guess I have this microphone too. And she said it means to maintain an open heart, to be open-heartedness when those difficulties are happening too.
Since Chris brought it up, I'm going through the same thing at the church where I have my preschool. And this has been going on for well over a year, and we've taken a stance and nobody was budging. So I've really, really made a huge effort, and boy, what a difference. What a difference. I just put out love, and I stop in and talk to everybody, and even the pastor was real standoffish before. Now we're all laughing and talking, and so I realize that I have the ability to create change.
Nice. Anyone else?
To have trust and faith that I'm doing the right thing, knowing that God leads me. And if I'm not, then I'll go into another direction.
Nice. Anyone else?
For me, it's reminding myself when I go off my path, I can always come back. Forgiveness.
Nice. Anybody else?
Looking for an outcome of something that'll always be for the greater good of everyone involved.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's living spirituality, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Thank you, Rick. And so, to me, living your spirituality means to really see through spiritual eyes. And I think when we do that, the result is all of those things that everybody shared. I think that living our spirituality is deciding that spirituality is the very cornerstone of our life. And if you don't know what a cornerstone is the first stone that is set in the construction of a masonry building. And why that cornerstone is important is when that cornerstone is set, every other stone is set in relationship to that stone. And that stone determines the entire direction of the building. And so when our spirituality becomes the cornerstone of our life, then it is the thing that is the determining factor for every choice we make, for everything we do, for every decision and every action. And so I'd like to share a story with you that was actually from Humans of New York that I read this week. And it is a young girl, maybe 20 years old or somewhere around there, from Jakarta, Indonesia. And she says, "My mom raised me on her own since I was young. My dad didn't care about our family. He was there physically, but he wasn't there. He kept all his income for himself. He gambled away our possessions. We couldn't buy anything for ourselves because he would sell it. He sold all of our electronics. He even sold our furniture. But my mom still did everything. Cooked for him, cooked his food, did his laundry, everything. Then one day, she came home from work and the house was empty. There was nothing left but our clothes. I told her it was time to go. For the last 2 years, we've been living in a rented house together. Mom seems so much lighter now. We can own our own things. We can actually make progress and move forward in life. I've started working at a pharmacy and I'm paying my way through college. I'm still in touch with my father. I even give him money for rent and food. I have no interest in taking revenge. I'm showing him how he should have treated us." That's living your spirituality. It's not in reaction to what's going out there. It's a decision that we make and a commitment that we make and a practice that we continuously bring ourselves back to come from our spirit, to come from our own wholeness, to come from love, to come from our heart. And so to me, living a spiritual life or living our spirituality is very different than living a religious life or being a religious person. In fact, I heard a quote that I love, and it says, "Religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell, and spirituality is for people who have already been there." Can you relate? So to me, religion is outer directed and spirituality is inner directed. Religion or living a religious life is about adhering to a particular doctrine. It's about adhering to preset or prescribed set of rules about how you should behave and what you should do. They come from the outside. But on the other hand, when you're living from your spirit, when you're living your spirituality, we don't need anyone to tell us what is right and wrong. We don't need anyone to give us the rules of how to behave in our lives. We get it from inside here. And so Ernest Holmes, the founder of this philosophy, speaks to this when he says, "How are we going to know what is right and wrong? We are not going to know. We already know. Every person knows right from wrong in its broadest sense. We already know what is right and what is wrong. But it takes courage, and it takes commitment, and it takes awareness, and it takes paying attention in order to make that right choice all the time. So when we live our spirituality, when we live from our spirit and we see through spiritual eyes, we follow that inner guidance. It's an inner compass. And when we follow that inner compass, it leads us into actions that are based in love, and that are based in compassion, and that are based in unity, that are based in fairness and equality. They're based in oneness, is what all that comes out of. When we live from our spirit and see through spiritual eyes, we make choices that are just. And like somebody shared, we make choices that are good for the whole, not just for us individually or not just for a select few, but the choices that we make are for the good of the whole and for everyone. And so there was another story that I read this week. It comes out of Boca Raton, Florida, and it was a story that was on the ABC News. It says, when the lunch bell rings at Boca Raton High School in Florida, 3,400 kids spill into the courtyard and split into their social groups. But not everyone gets included. As we first reported last March, here at Boca Raton High School and at schools across the country, someone always sits alone. Someone, quote, it's not a good feeling like you're by yourself, and that's something that I don't want anyone to go through, says Dennis Esteman. Dennis is a Haitian immigrant. When he came here in the first grade, he said he felt isolated, especially at lunch. Now he's popular, but he has not forgotten that first grade feeling. To me, it's like if we don't try to make that change, who's going to do it? So with some of his friends, Dennis started a club called We Dine Together. Their mission is to go into the courtyard at lunchtime and to make sure no one is starving for company. For a few kids, especially, this club is a godsend. Since it started last year, hundreds of friendships have formed, some very unlikely. Jean Max Meridew says he has met kids he would never, ever have met on the football team. Jean actually quit the football team, gave up all the perks that come with it, just so he could spend more time with his club. I don't mind not going to get a football scholarship, he says. This is what I really want to do. Just imagine how different your teenage years would have been if this coolest kids in the school had decided to come and sit with you and that you mattered. Quote, we all get to know each other better, Jean told one student. It obviously takes a lot of empathy to devote your lunch period to this, either that or firsthand experience. Another quote, I went from coming from a school where I always had friends to coming where I had nobody, said a club member, Allie. Allie transferred a year ago. She says, with no one to sit next to at lunch, lunch can be the most excruciating part of the day. It seems really unfair. It's honestly an issue, Allie said. Meeting someone who actually cares and listens to what you have to say really makes a difference. And that can happen at lunch. That can happen in our club. Since we first told this story, Dennis has graduated from high school, but not from this mission. He's now traveling the country, opening We Dine Together chapters at other schools. 15 so far, and 100 more are slated for the next year. And if we're lucky, when he's done showing kids how to make outsiders feel accepted, he can teach the rest of us. That's living from your spirit. That's seeing through the eyes and the heart of your spirit. Every one of us, we have a desire to experience what it feels like to be in our spirit. We all have a desire to feel and be connected with other people. We have a desire to feel that oneness with the whole and oneness with life itself, oneness with that infinite presence that is expressing itself everywhere. We have a longing also to live in harmony. and to live in peace and to live in that element of inclusion. We have a spiritual need, not to be a victim to this world, but instead to experience our own spiritual magnificence and our own spiritual power. We have a need to cause positive change, to be a beneficial presence, to make that kingdom here real. We have a need to live from our spirit, which is spirit itself, which is that infinite presence, which is our own divinity. And so Ernest Holmes speaks to this in the Science of Mind textbook when he says, all emerge from the one whose being is ever present and whose life, robed in numberless forms, is manifest throughout all creation. The one encompasses and flows through all, spilling itself into numberless forms and personalities. These forms and personalities, propelled by the cosmic urge which brings them into being, have within themselves an impulse implanted by the divine. That is an impulse implanted by the divine to bring our spirit into this world, to share our spirit, to live our spirituality, to live love and inclusion and care and concern and embracing and oneness. And so what does it take then to live from that place? To live from our higher self, to live from that center point of the divine within us? It takes practice and it takes commitment. The more spiritual practice we do, the easier and more natural it is to come from our spirit. It's the byproduct of doing spiritual practice. The easier it is to naturally come from love and connection and wholeness and peace and harmony and being anchored in the truth that all is well. Paul said that God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. The more we commune with that presence, the less we are in confusion and the more we are in peace. We find that light within us, and then we become a light in the world. Ernest Holmes also said that as you awaken, you will realize that you are awakening to yourself. That's what we're waking up to, that which is already in us. And so for me, one of the best tools is meditation. Because in meditation, what happens is we escape that small self. We escape that repetitive thinking that we think all the time, that limited and habitual and repetitive thinking. Do you find yourself caught in, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person did that. They are such an awful person. And you just keep going and going and going. We can spend the whole day stuck in something that happened. Meditation gets us out of that repetitive and habitual thinking. It gets us out of the realm of pairs of opposites, where there's right and wrong and good and bad and us and them. It gets us outside of, beyond those pairs of opposites. And in that place where there are no pairs of opposites, there is expansiveness. There is insight. There is new revelation. There is new ways of seeing things and thinking about things, and solutions present themselves to us that we never thought of before. Answers to problems, ways of seeing things, things to say. All of that comes in that expansive silence when we get beyond that yakety yak of our regular human mind. I remember a couple years ago, we had a Taizé service, which is a meditation service. The whole service is music and meditation, and we sit in silence through the whole thing. And one of our members at the time, Barbara Zunich, who has since moved to Arizona, was kind of complaining after the service that she doesn't like to meditate, and she was going on, and she just can't sit there for that long. And so she sat with her eyes open part of the time. She says, but you know what? I've been having this problem with this one woman who's in this club of mine, and just this problem for the longest time. It came to me about what I could say to her and how this could be resolved and what needed to happen for it to be different. Hello! That's what happens in meditation. It gives us the space for a new insight. and a new perspective and a new thing to do and say. Another fabulous practice is journaling. When you find yourself stuck in something that's going on in your life, if you just write about it, get it out, complain, put it all down on paper, and eventually you'll run out of the complaining. And when you get to that place, you ask yourself the question, what else do I need to know here? How else can I see this? What is seeking to be revealed? And you write that, and you'll be amazed at the answers that you get. They do not come out of your everyday thinking and out of your history of what you've done before. Revelations come forward. Creative ideas come forward. Contemplate those questions. Live in that question. What do I need to know here? Counterintuitive answers come to us. Listen to the wisdom inside of you, but you have to give that wisdom space in the quiet in order to hear it. And dedicate yourself to coming from your spirit, to seeing through the eyes of your spirit, coming from the divine within you. Make that your intention. Ask yourself, what would love do here? What would love do now in this moment? And when you're angry or you're frustrated or you find yourself upset, center yourself in that silence. Find your own center, your own place of peace within you, and listen to that silence. Peace, be still. And then when you finally get to that place of peace, then act from there. Then you'll be being a beneficial presence in the world. Then you'll be contributing to the expansion of the consciousness of humanity. Then you'll be living from your spirit and living from your spirituality. And in the words of Emerson, he says, do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. And so blessings to all of you on this path that you are on of making a difference in your own life and making a difference wherever you go. Blessings to all of you. And so I invite you to join me in an affirmative prayer. And so we take our attention right now from this world of effect, from this material realm, and instead we turn our vision, we turn our attention to that invisible realm of spirit that is everywhere present. That invisible realm that is a realm of absolute creativity and of wisdom and of knowingness. A realm that is the very energy of love and of oneness, of connection and of unity. We turn to this presence knowing that it is always right where we stand, for this one was before time began and will be unto the ends of the universe, and it is always right where we are. That it surrounds us and it envelops us and it lifts us and carries us and buoys us through life. And yes, it speaks within our hearts and within our souls as guidance and as direction and as that which works best for the whole, as a knowing of what is right, of a knowing of what to do and what to say and when to do it and when to say it. It is this one that is unfolding through our hearts as our spirits, as a beneficial presence in this world. And so how good it is to be walking this path, how good it is to be living this life of the divine. For there is only one life, and our life is its life. And so today I do know that it is leading us and guiding us and having its way by means of each of us as beauty and as magnificence, as glorification of that divine presence everywhere we go. And so how blessed we are to be recipients of this one, of all the good that it contains, for that is flowing into our lives now, flowing into us and through us and out from us into this world. And so it is with a grateful heart that I say thank you, God, for all of this, for this infinite life, for all of these blessings I give thanks for being awake and for being aware and for living this life of spirit. And so I release this prayer and I let it be, and so it is.